There, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today for our WordPress.com webinar on how to create custom blog pages using the WordPress block editor. Excuse me. I'm going to just give a few more minutes here just to let anyone else join the webinar who might be coming in a little bit late. In the meantime, let me introduce myself. My name is Jerry, and I am a happiness engineer in Seattle, Washington, where, fun fact, it's 11 o'clock in the evening right now. So you could say that I enjoy being up late to do these. So thanks for joining. In my day job, what I do is I help out with WordPress.com sites in our support forums, our free support forums. And we help with folks day in and day out that have questions about their WordPress sites, which I really enjoy quite a bit. I also really enjoy doing these webinars, so I'm really glad to have you all here with us tonight. Yeah, like I said, I'm going to just wait a few more minutes here. One thing I wanted to mention briefly before we get started is that we have a Q&A tab here in Zoom. So if you look at the very bottom of your interface, you'll see that there's a Q&A section. There's also a chat section as well. When we get underway with the webinar, if you have questions either about the webinar or you have a question maybe about your site, go ahead and drop that into the Q&A option, specifically the Q&A option at the bottom of your Zoom interface. When we get underway, it's a little hard for me to see questions when they come through in chat. Chat's a really great way to let us know if you're having a technical issue or, well, to let us know where you're from. For example, I see we've got folks here from all over the world right now. Bonus points for anyone that happens to be on my side of the world and tuning in late. I'd like to think I'm not the only one that's up here getting excited about WordPress. The other thing I want to say is that the contents of this webinar, they apply specifically to WordPress.com sites. And I know that some of you folks are going to be coming to us with a WordPress site that you might have with another provider like GoDaddy or Bluehost or HostGator, or really any of the many web hosts that are out there. They also all offer the option to install WordPress on your hosting account. And it's worth noting that those do behave just a little bit differently than the version of WordPress we use on WordPress.com. The primary difference is that we're a managed hosting service. So we specialize in WordPress, of course, because it's in our name. But we provide kind of a preset version of WordPress that includes a lot of functionality that you don't find on a WordPress site you have with another provider. We have some functionality here that you might not have on your site. The good news is that most everything about this webinar is going to apply to you, regardless of whether you have a WordPress site with WordPress.com or with another provider. The big difference that you'll probably notice is that we use a slightly different dashboard interface. If you have your own WordPress site with another provider, you probably use something called WP Admin to control your site. And we have that on WordPress.com too as a backup for folks that like it. But we also have our own custom dashboard interface, which looks a little different, although if you squint and you pay attention, you'll see that the options are really in the same places and the layout of things is really very similar. So it's slightly different, but really it still applies. The other thing I want to mention is that we're going to talk about a block here on this webinar, which is only available on WordPress.com, but I'll provide alternatives for folks that have WordPress with another provider as well. I think that's it. I think that's it for all the things that I had to cover here today. Looks like we've got a good crowd here, 24 people. I'm going to go ahead and get started with our presentation. And at the end, I'm going to take your questions. And I also have a few colleagues in the room with me who are going to help answer any questions via text that I can't take for myself live. And we will answer questions until we run out of questions or until the top of the hour. So if you have any questions, go ahead and drop them in the Q&A. And let's go ahead and get started with custom blog pages. How to create a personalized display of blog posts using the WordPress block editor. That's a mouthful, isn't it? Okay, well, let's start at the beginning. Let's really talk about what is a blog page exactly. You know, it won't surprise you to find out the definition is that it's a page with blog posts on it. Very obvious, of course. But it's a little more complicated than that. It's actually it's a dynamic page. It's usually a page that you set up on your site and then you don't really edit it or do anything with it directly. And all you do is publish blog posts from your blog. And as you publish a new blog post, it gets added to the blog post page automatically. And then what it does is it pushes down any older posts. So it tends to show your blog posts from the newest and most recent down to the oldest. And it does this dynamically. It does this automatically. And WordPress manages that for you so that once you have a blog page set up, all you have to do is publish blog posts and those show up automatically. And by default, actually, all WordPress themes, they come with a very simple template that's built in for displaying blog posts. It doesn't matter if you have a business site or you're using a business theme, for example, or if you're actually just setting up a blog intentionally. All themes will come with a blog post page that is already built into the theme. And generally, when you install WordPress out of the box and just start publishing blog posts, if you do nothing else, blog posts will generally show up on your homepage automatically. So out of the box, WordPress will make the blog post page into your homepage, essentially, where all your blog posts are going to appear. But a blog page doesn't just have to include the one that is provided for you by your theme. Actually, you have the option to create your own custom blog pages if you want, using the WordPress block editor. And this is really great because you used to be able to customize your blog page if you were very handy with CSS and PHP and JavaScript and a whole bunch of other programming languages. But now with the WordPress block editor, you don't actually need any coding or any design skills at all. You can actually create your own custom blog pages just using the WordPress block editor. And we're actually going to show that here today. So let's talk about the different ways that you can display blog posts on your WordPress site. The first one, as I mentioned, is the post page template that's included in your theme. We're going to talk about that a little bit briefly today. And another way to do it is to add what we call a post carousel block, which you can think of as looking a little bit like a slideshow, although it doesn't just show images, it actually shows content, like blog posts in this case, or pages or other content. It'll show a title, a description sometimes, and an image, and it'll rotate through those just like a slideshow, but it's called a post carousel. Sometimes it's called a slider, if you've ever heard that term as well. And another way that you can set up a blog post page is to just create a new page and add something called the blog post block. And the blog post block is something that's specific to WordPress.com. So this is a block you can add on your page, and with a couple of settings, you can put a custom blog feed on any page on your site. For folks who are tuning in, they have WordPress with another provider. There's a second option that's available. It's called the query loop block. And it essentially does the same thing. It's a block that you can put into a page, and it'll automatically start displaying blog posts on that page. We're going to cover all of these blocks, actually, so you'll get to see them all in action here pretty soon. For now, though, let's go ahead and let's switch over and let's actually take a look at the demo site that we're going to be working from today and some of the things we're going to be creating. So this is a sample blog site that was created by my colleague Anne, and her two favorite things in the world are coffee and cats. And so this is a blog about her love of coffee and cats. And what I want to show off here on the homepage is you can see that there's this slider or carousel of blog posts that's been added. So right here on the homepage, including with the welcome message, you can see the latest content from the blog. In addition to that, this sample demo site has a custom blog page set up. This one's using a 3-column layout, and you can see it's displaying quite a few blog posts in this sort of nice compact layout. So you get a lot of blog posts into a single area on the page. And this block, this is one of the layout options that it has. So this one block called the blog post block actually has quite a few options. So we're going to dive into those. We're going to take a look at what those look like here in just a minute. So let's get back to our presentation here. And let's start by talking about what's built into your site, which is the default post page. And as I mentioned previously, this is generally included in your theme by default. There's really nothing you need to do to set it up. You just need to install your WordPress theme and start using it. And this is where your blog posts will display. And generally speaking, and really for probably 95%, maybe more of WordPress sites out there, the design of this page is predetermined. It's set for you by the designer of your theme, and it isn't something that you can usually customize that easily. Some themes might include options or checkboxes or things like that to give you some control, but generally speaking, you can't customize these to a great degree. The difference here is that newer themes actually, they are customizable because they use the query loop block as part of the default template. So you'll see soon you can really customize that quite a bit. But like I said, for the majority of WordPress sites out there, the design of your default post page is not something that you can really change unless you know code, for example. And also, as I mentioned, this will display your blog posts by default from newest to oldest. And typically, this is not something you can change. You can't have it show older posts instead of newer posts. You can't do a custom order to them, things like that. Like I said, it really is just sort of set in stone. But it does work beautifully. When you take WordPress right out of the box, you can start publishing your blog posts and they start showing up on the site immediately. And they use a design that is very cohesive with the theme, looks very much like it's a part of the rest of the pages of the site. It really is quite nice. We're going to go ahead and take a look at one here. And this is on my demo site here. And you can see this is the actual default blog post page that comes with this theme when you first set it up. And it's got really large images. It's got, a little bit of sample text from each blog post, and it displays the date and the title and things like that. But generally speaking, this is not customizable. This is not something that you can change or control. I will say that with this theme, because it's a newer theme, this is actually a query loop block, so you could control this. But like I say, for 99% of themes out there, this really isn't something that you have a lot of control over. Oops, I skipped a slide there. So I should have gone to the demo slide for that. Okay, so let's talk about the next way to display blog posts. And this is where we can get into start actually building things instead of just looking at things. And so what we're going to do is we're going to set up the post carousel block here, which I mentioned is a way to display your blog posts, kind of like a slideshow. You're going to see it in action here in a second. The cool thing about it is some of the options it has includes the ability to have filtering by category or tag or author or a few other things. So you can actually use it to not show every blog post on your site, but just some selected posts, anything that you really want to show, for example. So like I said, filtered by category or tag or author is a really great way to create a page that just displays some of your blog posts, maybe from a particular category, for example. The really cool thing about the post carousel block is it can also display pages or testimonials or portfolio items if you have those set up on your site. I do want to mention that the post carousel block is not something that's included in self-hosted or WordPress.org websites. WordPress, you have with another provider. So generally, you might need to find a plugin to do this, but there are plenty of carousel or slider plugins out there that you could use. So I'll be showing you the one we have with WordPress.com, but it is really very similar if you go get yourself a plugin and install it that way on your site. So let's go ahead and demo the blog post block. And to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my the pages area of my dashboard here. So this is just under pages and all pages. And I have a page actually already set up for this right here. So I'm going to launch this demo homepage I have set up. And the idea here is that we have this homepage that's already created. And what we'd like to do is we'd like to find a way to display some recent blog posts from our blog. And we're going to do that using the carousel block. And we'd like it to end up here, kind of between this welcome section and then above this area here, where we're asking you to give an email address and sign up and subscribe to our blog. It's really great to show blog posts actually before you show the option to subscribe. I don't know if you've had this happen to you, but if you've ever been to a site and had that pop-up appear asking you to subscribe right away, and you're asking yourself, well, I haven't even had time to look at the site yet, that's generally a problem. So I think a really great way to go about this is to show your blog posts and then right below it, as someone scrolls down, offer the option to sign up. So to do this, what we're going to do is we're going to put our cursor here in the middle. What I'd like to do is I'm going to go ahead and just hit my plus key here, and that's going to add the block selector sidebar here on the side. And I'm going to search for the carousel. Here we go. And I don't even have to finish typing in the word carousel, and it already starts showing up for me automatically. And when I click on it, that gets added down here at the bottom of our layout. So the first thing I'd like to do is I'd like to start moving it up in my layout. So I'm going to just use the arrow controls that are here in this floating toolbar that comes above the block. And now you can see I've moved it into position here. It's right between the two parts of the page where I'd like it to be. So it's great. If you ever put a block in the wrong spot, it's really pretty easy to move it back to where you need it to go. The other thing I think I would like to do here is, let's see, let's take this, let's make it a little bit wider. I don't think this is really quite wide enough. So let's put it wide. And you can see that that has made it actually quite a bit wider. And the really great thing about this block is without you having to do anything, it's already pre-populated itself with content. I have blog posts on this site. They're all set up and ready to go. So once you add a block like this, they just show up. If you ever add a block like this and nothing starts showing up, typically it means you don't have any blog posts yet. So it really helps to get your blog post set up first before you start setting up your main blog post page. You'll see in this demo, things go a lot easier this way. And this is actually really nice. This is you know, a really good look. I think what I'd like to do is make a couple changes here based on the settings on the right. So one thing we can do is we can change the number of posts that we're displaying in the carousel. We can move this amount up, gosh, all the way to 100 if you wanted to. We don't have that many blog posts on our site, so I'm going to set this down to a more reasonable number, like let's say 8. And just a word to the wise, I do recommend actually showing some constraint here. You can definitely put a lot of blog posts in the carousel, but the more you put in it, the more it slows things down on your site in terms of how long your page loads for people who are visiting your site. So a little bit of restraint is always a good idea here. I think, you know, 7 to 9 is really about the max that I would probably put in something like this. But you can if you want to, and if you have really good hosting, and you know you don't have problems with performance, then you might actually be able to get more in there. But again, I like to just kind of err on the side of caution for anyone who's using a slow internet connection to view my site. The fewer slides I have in here, the faster this page is going to load for them. Also, we have some options here to filter by category. I could, for example, if I wanted to just filter this by one of my categories, which is coffee. And if I click on that, automatically you can see that the only thing it shows is just all the blog posts that I have that are related to coffee. In this case, I just want to show recent posts. So I'm going to go ahead and clear out that filter for now. What else would I like to change about this? You can change the aspect ratio of your images. You can make the sort of the crop that the image is in into a different shape if you want. Another thing you can do is you can turn on autoplay, which I think is really great. So this will just, if I do nothing else here, it's going to transition between the slides and it'll actually do it based on the setting you have here. So this has a 5-second delay. I could extend this a little bit to maybe 6 or 7. The idea being you want to give people just a little time to be able to read it. So you don't want these slides to go so fast that someone doesn't have time to read the titles. Or else they'll probably get frustrated with it because it'll just move a little fast for them. The other thing I want to do here is I actually want to increase the number of blog posts I'm showing in this section. So I'm going to increase that to 3. And you can see this is already starting to look a whole lot like the version that we had on our homepage. The one thing I'm going to change here is I'm going to turn off the author tag. So that just cleans things up a little bit and gives a little more space for the title here. And then you can see we've got all of our blog posts here. Another thing that I think I'd like to do here is I'd like to add a, I'm going to click on this block and then I'm going to hit the return key on my keyboard. Oops, there we go. And I'd like to add a heading here. I'd actually like to create a little separation between this and the next section. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to type in a heading. And a really cool trick for getting blocks, by the way, you type in / and then the name of the block. And you can see where I drop my cursor is exactly where I'm going to place this block. And I can pick the heading block that way. So in addition to picking the plus sign that you have here, and sometimes you see the plus sign here in the layout as well, a really cool trick if you know the title of your block is just to type / and then the name of the block and then pick it that way. It's a really great way to work quickly through this, this kind of layout. And I'm going to paste in some text that I have already ready for me off to the side here. And then I'm going to go ahead and center this text so that it looks like it's a little bit more positioned well here, centered with everything else in the page. And I think that's about it. And there you go. Just like that, we have added the carousel block to our home page. And you can add this to any page on your site, of course, but I think the home page is probably the most natural place for this particular kind of block. Okay, next up, another way that we're going to create a custom blog page is with the blog post block. And similar to the carousel, this can hold as many as 100 blog posts within the single block. Again, the limitation being that it'll sometimes slow your site down if you try to load too many things. The nice thing is if you set it for a smaller number, there's an option at the bottom to click to load new posts. So you still have options to access the rest of the content that way. And it'll display up to 100 blocks, just a page at a time, doing it that way. And also, just like the carousel block, that you can filter this based on category or tag or author. You don't have to show all your blog posts. You can be selective about what appears in this block. You also have the option to display featured image, excerpts, change the styling. You'll see actually this one block is really quite powerful in the different options that it has. And also, like the carousel block, you don't just have to display blog posts in this block. You can also set it up to display pages or testimonials or portfolio projects. So let's go ahead and oops, here we go. Let's go ahead and get started here with our demo. So I'm going to go back to my pages. Here we go. And I'm going to not save these changes for this. I already have a home page set up. And let's go ahead and click on this demo that I have set up for our custom blog page. And actually for this, there is nothing here. There's just a title, really. And actually, that's the really great thing about this block, is that you don't need anything else, really. I'm just going to go ahead and click on this plus symbol and insert it this way. And I'm going to look for the blog post block. Oops. There we go. And once I click on that, you can see it's added it into my layout. Very similar to the carousel, it already starts populating with my blog posts automatically. Similar to the carousel block, I would like this to be a little wider though. So I'm going to choose the option to go wide width. And if you wanted to, you could even get really crazy and go full width, which will make really huge images in this case. So it's not necessarily something I recommend, but a lot of blocks have that option as well, to set a wide width. The other thing that you can experiment with here is you can see that this very similar to the default view for this theme, the default blog post page that you get when you install this theme. It has a very simple layout when you first put it in, with just a big image and a little bit of text. But that's not the only option for this block, of course. We could move all the images to the left and then display our content on the right, for example, or swap it to the other side, or condense everything and show it all just with the image as a background, for example. So we got a couple of really good options there. There's also options here to crop the images too. So you can see that these images come in at some sort of different sizes. And if we wanted to, we could actually make them all square, for example, and have them be cropped automatically that way for consistency. For this, we're going to go ahead and we're going to do a grid view though, which I happen to like. And we're going to stick to the original crop because I think that's fine as well. And you can see that right now it's just showing 3 blog posts, which really isn't very much, but you do have the option to add more items here with this slider. So we could obviously slide this all the way over to 100, although I don't have that many blog posts here. Because we're in columns of 3, I like to choose like a multiple of 3, like 9 or 12, for example. So let's choose 9. And you don't have to be fidgety with this slider when you're selecting it. You can just go ahead over here into the text box and just type in the number you need to. So there's no need to sit there and just get really fiddly with it or anything like that. As with the carousel block, if we wanted to, we could add a category here to filter. Obviously I use my example of coffee, and we can do that, and we can filter just all of our coffee posts here, for example. We can also change the number of columns that we have here. We could do 2 columns and have a little bit more space for each blog post, or we could go all the way up to 6 columns and really squeeze a bunch of stuff in there. Let's go back to 3, because I really like that look. I think 3 is the magic number here in terms of columns. We would have the option to turn the featured image on or off if you don't want to show images. I happen to like the images that are here, so I'm going to set the featured image to show. And I'm also going to add a read more link, so you can see we're just showing a brief portion of the blog post. And things like the title and the image are already linked to the blog post. So if someone was to click on these, they would go directly to the blog post where they can really read the rest of it. But for people who don't quite figure out that they can click on it, it's always nice to have a little hint down here below to keep on reading. So I like turning that on as well. And you can customize this if you want to. So you can say continue reading. Maybe with a little arrow just to make it really obvious what I'd like you to do next. The other thing I think I'm going to do here is I'm going to just hide this author, again, just to sort of clean up the layout. And then basically that's it. And you can see that we've created this custom blog page, basically just using the blog post block. And this is really great, especially if you have a theme that has a default blog page that you can't edit, but you don't particularly care for the look of, or there's something you'd like to do that's really different about it. So you could instead just create a page called blog and pop in this blog post block. And then with a few settings, you can see that you can have yourself a totally custom layout. And the really cool thing about this is that this is not the only block that has to be on this page. So for example, at the very bottom here, if I wanted to, I could go ahead and add a subscribe block, for example. And I could ask people to subscribe to my site afterwards. Or I might want to put a little bio down here talking about me as the author, or I might want to put an introductory section here at the top, which I could do just by adding a block and putting a section in there like that as well. So really, this is just the start. Like, you can create a custom blog feed this way with this one block, but it isn't where this needs to end. You can actually continue to customize this page and add other things as well. So it doesn't just have to be your blog feed. Which is usually the case with the default blog post page. You can't really add stuff to that. It's just sort of what you get when you install your theme. So again, this is really pretty cool way to go. And it didn't used to be an option until the block editor was released recently. Okay, so we're looking good there. Let's go ahead and let's get back to, this is our last option for adding blog posts and creating a custom blog page. And this is called the query loop block. And as I mentioned earlier, if you have a WordPress site with another provider like Bluehost or HostGator or any of the other providers that are out there, you wouldn't have the option to use the blog post block, but you do have the option to use the query loop block if you've updated to the most recent version of WordPress. So this would be the way that you would pretty much set up something similar. So obviously it is very similar, but it does have a slightly different design. I think between the two, the blog post block is a really nice way to set up something quickly. And this is a way to set up something a little bit more custom. But it can display posts or pages, same as the other block. Does not yet have the option to display items from your portfolio or testimonials or things like that. But the query loop is something that's it's a fairly new block. It's under development, and so new features are being added to it all the time. So it's definitely one to watch for. I think with each new version of WordPress, this is just going to get even more powerful. But also, of course, with that flexibility comes greater complexity as well. And we'll talk about that a little bit when we demo this. So you can sort of see what I'm talking about with the ability to customize and how it adds a little bit of complexity, but it really also gives you the ability to do what you want. And this block is available for both WordPress.com and for self-hosted users of WordPress who have WordPress with another host. So also, if you're on WordPress.com, you can use this as well. And also, if you have a newer theme, this may be the way that your default blog post template is set up. It may have this query loop block in it. So you would actually then be able to customize it just the way that we're going to do here now. But I do think that the name of the block is a little confusing. This is, WordPress being an open source project and being worked on by developers. It has kind of a very developer-y sort of name called the query loop, which doesn't make a lot of sense. So I thought I'd break it down for you, just so you can understand a little bit better. And one good way to think of it is a query is basically the equivalent to asking a question. And a loop is essentially the answer you get from asking that question. So for example, I'm going to use the query loop block, and I'm going to ask WordPress, hey, show me all the blog posts that I have under the travel category. And then WordPress is going to add to the block basically the answer to my question. It's going to add all of the blog posts that fall underneath that category. So again, a query loop is basically you're asking WordPress a question and it's giving you an answer in the form of blog posts. So let's go ahead and let's set this up. I'm going to back out of this demo page I was working on here, and let's set up a query loop. Very similar to this, I've just set up a blank page with really nothing going on in it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the query loop block, and same as before, I'm just going to type and search for it. You can see I've used it a lot recently, and your recent blocks will often end up in here. So since I've been using it a lot lately, just sort of experimenting with it, it shows up right away. And when you have it here, there's really not a lot going on. But if you click on choose, what it'll let you do is it'll let you choose from some predefined layouts. It looks like this is taking just a little bit of time to load because, you know, I'm doing a webinar and I'm sharing my screen, and really this is this is going to take a little bit to load. But I'm going to switch to the gallery view here. So instead of viewing these one at a time, we can look at each of these patterns together, and you can see that this block already shows you a preview of what your blog post would look like if you were to set it to one of the patterns that you see here. And if you scroll around, it's taking a little time for the images to load, of course, because I'm asking just a little too much of my network here right now. But I'm going to pick this one, which is loaded. I know from experimenting with it earlier that this one is very similar in that it displays a grid of blog posts with the featured image and the title and then the date. This one has kind of a very unique style, and it doesn't really have a lot of options. You can see when I look over here, I have some options for setting my columns, and I do have the option here to make it wider, for example. I think actually this block is not working for that. Let me go ahead and I'm going to choose a different version of this same block here. So let me drop this block out. This is the fun of doing a live webinar, is that given a little fits here with the network right now. So let's go ahead and let's add the query loop block again. I'm going to choose from the patterns. It's definitely taking some time to load, so I might just have to pick another one here. Here we go. Let this load up for me a bit. There we go. This is the one I was looking for, so let's go ahead and use that one. You can see that this one is really very similar to the blog post block we set up. And actually, really, a lot of these are very similar to other ways that you could set up the blog post block. So some of the variations that are shown in this when you first add the block are also designs when you could arrive at if you were to use the settings in the blog post block we showed earlier. But it is a little bit different in that you first you choose your design when you add the block. And as I mentioned, it just doesn't have very many settings over here. It has a setting for your columns, and it has the setting here for the width. In this case, it's correctly showing the wide width that I wanted to set. Again, I think I'm sort of having some network issues here that are contributing to some problems with this, but it does have the ability to display full width as well. I was doing this just a little bit ago here when I was practicing for this webinar, so I can assure you it does load a little bit more smoothly than that. Anyway, so the thing that you don't see here, and the reason why there isn't a whole bunch of options here, is because everything that's inside of this block is also a block. So if I was to click on the image, for example, I can select the image block, or I can select the title block, or the block for the description, the excerpt it's called. So let me open the sidebar here so you can kind of see a little better what I'm talking about. This is the query loop, which is basically a container that's holding these blog posts. and then it's showing each of these individually. And this opens up some really interesting possibilities that you didn't have with the blog post block. For example, if I wanted to, I could take the title and I could drag it above the image. So I can have the title first and then the image and then the excerpt. With the blog post block, you can't do that. The layout is fairly set. You have a lot of cool options, and it's a great way to create a feed, but it doesn't have this kind of adjustability where you can actually go in here and you can start moving things around. Let's say, for example, I wanted to not show a featured image at all. I could just, of course, remove the featured image block. And you can see that when I do this, it actually removes them for them all. So anytime I make a change to any one of the blog posts, it's repeated throughout the loop. It's repeated for every blog post that's being modified here. So they all have a uniform look. In this case, I'd like that back. So I'm going to undo, and I'm going to get my featured image back. But what I would like to do is I'd like to create a continue reading link. Oops. And let's go ahead and make it bold. This is another thing you couldn't do with the blog post block. You couldn't reach in here and just specify which bits of text you want to be bold, or for example, I can make this link, I can make all the text larger in here, which really wasn't an option with the blog post block. You couldn't reach in here and change the size of text like this. And the cool thing about this is that you also then have the option to add other blocks. So let's say, for example, here, I would like to add, I'd like to add my thumbnail of myself as an author. So I can just click on the block inserter and I can search for the author block. Oops. It would help if I spelled it correctly, wouldn't it? And then you can see I can add the post author in here. And then basically this is just added in the place where my cursor was last. I might want to move it above here, maybe put it just under the featured image so you can see who it's written by, and then you can see what I wrote, for example. So again, this block is really a really powerful block. It doesn't have the same easy to use settings as the blog post block, but I would say that in the long run, it has a lot more functionality in terms of customizing how you want your blog page to look. And as I mentioned, this is a block that's getting a lot of development, so it's only going to get better from here. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's review a little bit about custom blog pages. So today we learned how the built-in template for blog posts works on your theme. We talked a little bit about the carousel block and how it's like a slideshow for blog posts, which is really cool, and it's something you can add to your homepage or any other page where you'd like to show kind of a dynamic object that's draws attention to itself. And you can use the blog post block to create a list of posts on any page. And you can use the query loop to do the exact same thing, only with a lot more power and a lot more options. Oops, let me get to that in a second. So first of all, I want to say thank you all very much for attending. It's been really great to have you here for the webinar. I'm going to get to Q&A here in just a second. But before I do, I want to mention that we do have other webinars at WordPress.com/webinars. In addition to this webinar, we currently have a webinar on creating custom home pages as well using the block editor. So very similar to this, it's a live performance, and you can sign up for that, and you can see how to build a custom homepage for your site using the block editor as well. Also, we have self-guided classes at wpcourses.com. So you can welcome to sign up there. These are free. The webinars and the courses are free, and they would allow you to sign up and extend your learning that way. Okay, so thank you again. I got the slides in the reverse order there, but we got to it in the end. So let's go ahead and let's get to your Q&A. To do that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drop into my dashboard here, just in case I can demo anything. So let's start at the top here with Layla, who asks, can each of the 3 carousels display from a different category? No. I think what you're referring to is the one that's on the home page. And that can't do that. I think what I would say instead is that there is a way to do it, but not in a slider. So if you wanted to, let me create a page really quickly here. And let me see if I can set up something really quickly. Let's add new. And I'm going to create a page here. with, we're going to go with a blank page for now. I'm just going to call this my, my 3 categories. And to this, what I'm going to do to create the initial structure, I'm going to add something called a columns block. And I'm going to choose the option for 3 equal sized columns. And just to give us a little bit of room here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, I'm going to make this a lot wider than it is now. And then inside of each of these columns, you could put a block now. So for this one right here, I can put in the blog post block. I can, and you can see when it comes in, it starts displaying a list of posts. You could display a full list of posts like this. You could make it more compact by turning off the featured image. Let's show just our coffee category here. And actually, if we wanted to, we could set this to just one like that. And so then this would be a way to add one that just shows one category on our site. And then we would just do the same for the other columns as well. So I could just set up another blog post block, set it to a different category. I could even add headings above each one. So I could add a title up here that says, this is my coffee category, this is my cats category, this is my travel category. So not within a slider, but you could definitely set up 3 columns that are dedicated to each category. Okay, so I hope that helps, Layla. Next question is from Indria, who asks, so the 3 WordPress features explained here are blog posts, blog carousel, and query loop block, right? Yeah, sorry, maybe I didn't understand that question, but that is basically the options that are there. But like I said, that's not really where it ends. So let me show you this an example that I have here set up on this test site as well. This is called my coffee page. And this is just blog posts from the category of coffee, which you can see I've set up here using the blog post block that we're all familiar with. But the ability to customize this page now means that I can do something really cool. Like I can add this image at the top with a really nice quote that lines up with my category, for example. So although the blocks that we're displaying here are just the 3, those open up endless possibilities in terms of different combinations you can do as well. So you could create the appearance of having multiple blogs on your site just by creating 3 separate pages, say, for the 3 main categories you have on your site, and then setting it up like this. And each page could have a completely different look, completely different stuff on it compared to the other ones. So I hope that helps give you a couple of ideas on how you can customize these pages a little bit better. Let's move on to the next question here, which is from Layla again, who asks, can each of the blocks you showed in answering my questions be an individual carousel? I'm not sure I understood that question, Layla, so if you want to re-ask it, I'll take another crack at it, but I'm not 100% sure that I understood that question. Looks like someone's going to type the answer here. Can you share this to other developers? Well, if they'll tune into this webinar, they definitely can. Oh, by the way, this webinar is being recorded and it is available. We're going to put it on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. Let me go ahead and drop a link to that here in our chat. So you can all, there we go. So we will have a copy of this webinar posted to our YouTube channel. It'll take us a day or two. We're going to make sure to do transcription for it so that it has proper subtitles and then get it posted up. So go ahead and subscribe to our WordPress.com YouTube channel, and then you can be alerted when this is posted online. Oh, we got one more question that came in here. Again, I'll answer questions till the top of the hour. So if you have any other questions, that's great. Go ahead and add those in here, and I'll answer until I run out of questions or until we hit the top of the hour. Dennis asks, like, for example, I'm a newbie and share these block things and share the program. No, I'm sorry. I think I had you restate your question. I didn't quite understand. We might need to have a little bit of a longer conversation about it. So go ahead and contact us at WordPress.com/help. And we can get a little bit more info from you on that and see if we can help you out. Layla asks, how many carousels can you create on a page? The answer is actually there's no limit. Excuse me, I need a little glass of water here. There's no limit to how many carousel that you can have on a page, but the practical limitation is really, like I said, it's about the speed, how long it takes to load that much content on your page. So you could, for example, have 50 carousels on a single page, but it might take a really, really long time to load. I think at most I'd recommend one or two. I tend to think of them as sort of like special spice. You sprinkle it around here and there. You don't need a lot. You don't want to overwhelm. But a carousel here or there is really compelling, and it really draws a lot of attention to itself. And it's something you see very commonly on a lot of sites too. So it's definitely something that visitors to your site are going to expect, and they're going to know how to interact with when they see it. So I hope that answers your question. Again, you might just have to experiment here a little bit. But I would definitely use a little bit of restraint and not go crazy with slider blocks, because it probably will slow things down a little bit. Okay, great. Well, it looks like we're out of questions here, so I'm going to go ahead and end our webinar. I really want to thank you all for attending. Again, you're welcome to check out our other webinars at WordPress.com/webinars, or check out our online courses at WPcourses.com. And until then, I hope I get to see you on another webinar. If not, if you have a site on WordPress.com, I might actually be the person helping you next with your site. So until then, cheers, everyone. I'm going to leave the webinar up for a few more minutes in case you need to copy any links or information out of the Q&A. But I'm going to go ahead and sign off for now and turn off my camera and my microphone. So again, thank you all for attending. I hope to see you on the next one.